Hello everybody, Xander here, and today we're back with another book review. Start off with kind of apologies for not getting anything out for the rest of March. The only thing I did was the review for the latest Spider-Man comic, or semi-latest because issue 3 did come out recently, which I'll get to at some point as well. But a lot of stuff happened. But we finished their book, and I'm able to get a review out. So today we are talking about Holly by Stephen King, and this was released in 2023 and is a sort of mystery thriller. Usually Stephen King's known for horror, but this is kind of more so a mystery, but has those little sprinklings of horror for the most part. This apparently is a continuation of his Mr. Mercedes series, which I haven't read, but it follows one of the main characters, Holly Gibney, who is now a private investigator looking for a missing young woman after her mother, asks her to go look for her, and it becomes a whole case involving other missing persons, and she's trying to figure out what the connection is from all these different people. This is also a book set in during COVID-19. It's set in 2021 specifically, so all of the stuff going on, it's just after some people started getting vaccinated, but people are still worried, and it's kind of a little background part of the story, but it's a mystery, so it's going to be about finding people. For the most part, I enjoyed this book. Sometimes mysteries aren't my favorite for a book, because sometimes I just like watching a mystery play out, but this was a good enough one in book form. It's not a bad jumping off point for this series that King has written, because again, I have not read any of the previous Holly related books, though I do now know that after glancing at the author's notes by King at the end, I do own a short story collection that has a story with Holly, If It Bleeds, so I'll read that at some point, but I still have not read Mr. Mercedes. But yeah, it didn't feel confusing at all. Obviously there were a lot of references to the series, but it was kind of explaining it at the same time, so it's not like a name drop. It's some name drops, but also some explanation, which is mostly nice. Sometimes there's a little too much name dropping, especially for stuff that is very much explained, like Holly's backstory with her mother, which is also a part of the story, part of her story, and how she deals with her death before the events of this book. And a lot of interesting stuff. I don't know if I should talk about the villains in the spoiler-free beginning of this video, because I don't think it's really brought up too much. Okay, it's kind of brought up in the little story description, the jacket, but I think I'll stick with not mentioning it. So yeah, I enjoyed this book. It's probably not my favorite King book, but I have just started getting back into Stephen King after a long time, so I'll read some more stuff. And it's probably also kind of a thing that I'll just have to work with over time, because there's all the different things. Like, you gotta check out his different stuff. You gotta check out his different types of fiction, his horror, which he's known for, his new stuff, his old stuff, things like that. And I've read his old stuff in the past, like It and The Shining, but I don't remember all of it. And so I'll have to re-educate myself with Stephen King. But yeah, I would recommend this for the most part. I guess I should mention there's quite a bit of talks of political stuff, which I guess you can't avoid when getting into COVID, because it's just kind of weaved in there. So keep that in mind. It's going to be maybe something you're not comfortable with. It is quite apparent. It plays into some character motivations, like the villains. There's a little bit of that, or even just that little deep inside the villains. At least one of them. That's all I'm going to say about the villains right now. I don't know how to talk about that, all of that exactly. Because I don't want to sound like I'm all for one aspect of it. If you get what I'm saying, I don't want to pick a side in this case. I just want to make it clear that if you're going in this book, just know that that's going to be in there. It's going to be in a decent amount of it. If you're for that, you don't mind that politics can sometimes make a story deeper when it's done right, then you can safely check this out. So, real quick before we get into spoilers, the full story, mostly the full story, kind of discuss it. I feel like I should start giving actual ratings to books, because it seems right. I've done it when I review movies and TV shows, so we'll edit in some numbers. I'll do the 1 out of 10 system that I usually do, but for this, so I'm going to give Stephen King's Holly a 7 out of 10. I think that's a pretty solid rating for this sort of book. Check it out if you want. And I am excited to read more King in the future. So, okay, so we're going to get into spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, please leave and read this. But if you have either read this book or just want to know what I think spoiler-wise, then stick around. Okay, let's get into it. So, like I mentioned, Holly's mother dies at the beginning, or before the beginning of the story, and she dies of COVID. And that is one of the things that plays into the story in a political aspect, the fact that it's mentioned in the book that Holly's mother, Charlotte, did not really believe in COVID and was a Trump supporter. So there's kind of that thing of, it's not, at least from the book's perspective, but more so Holly's perspective, that did not help with her relationship with her mother, or just how she feels about her, but also the fact that she didn't believe in COVID, and what do you know, it got her in the end. So she's suppressing these feelings, these negative thoughts of her mother, while everyone's like, oh, I'm so sorry about your mother's passing, and she's kind of processing all of that. And there's also, little things in the first half talking about her inheritance and the mansion that she's gonna get from her mother. aside from that, the book actually opens up with a man named Jorge who's like taking a run in this, neighborhood that is gonna show up quite a bit, and he gets kidnapped by an elderly couple who is, trying to get the other into the van, but the wheelchair ramp is busted, and he gets kidnapped by them and put in their basement. These are the villains of the story. An old couple called the Harrises. You got the husband Roddy and the wife Emily, and they're absolutely crazy. Obviously, I'm not gonna go too long with the story because this is a 400-page book. But the gist of it is, this old couple kidnaps people over a long time. I think they have been doing it for a few years now. And they kidnap them. They put them in their basement where they've got like a cage basically, and they're forcing them to eat raw liver. And it's obviously at first it's not clear why, but it becomes clear that they are feeding them this liver because supposedly it activates the health benefits of their liver. So this old couple is basically preparing them to be eaten. So they kill them and eat them because apparently it's going to make them feel better because they're old and they've got problems with Roddy having arthritis and Alzheimer's and Emily having sciatica. And again, they're fucking nuts. They're absolutely nuts. And if eating people, kidnapping people, feeding them, guess what? No, wait, I think if I remember correctly, because I remember the beginning, because I'm pretty sure they're buying liver at the supermarket and then feeding it to them. It's not like they're using their victims' livers, but they might be doing that later. I forgot. But outside of eating people, they're also just, not nice. They've got that fame where, they seem so nice to their community, but in reality they're kind of vindictive, especially Emily, as it's going to be apparent throughout the book. She is probably the worst of the pair. She's, vindictive, and she's also pretty racist, as her sort of introspective bits show up throughout their sections of the book. It doesn't it does just enough to make it clear that she's racist, whether it's more subtle things or somewhat unsubtle moments where it's in her perspective, her saying very nasty words about people, but not the ones you always think of. But as we'll see later in her journal, she apparently rants in. She does. We just don't see it. But the rest of the story, because this book is called Holly, so it follows Holly. She has been hired by a woman named Penny Doll, who is looking for her missing 20-something-year-old daughter Bonnie, who is missing, and obviously Holly's got to go find her. And as she keeps searching, it becomes apparent that there are other people who have gone missing that might connect to this. At first, Holly is unsure and kind of denies that because there's nothing that truly connects them, because a lot of the people that we find out have gone missing and are connected to the old people. There's not really any red herrings. all of them are of different genders, ages, and occupations, but it becomes apparent that they've all kind of disappeared around the same area, this park, which is decently close to the Harris's house. So that connection becomes apparent, and obviously Holly's going to figure that out. You've also got stuff in between, not just the perspective of the old couple and Holly, but also you've got a younger friend of Holly's named Barbara, who is the sister of her other friend, Jerome, who is a writer, and she is trying to write poetry. And there's a part where she tries to impress a very, very old but famous poet. And at one point she meets Emily Harris, and she kind of tries to steer her away from this poet, and also even change her poetry a little bit by even like suggesting that what she wrote was about the Black experience and not what the book mentions. Her actual experience in writing this poetry is based on what she experienced in the Mr. Mercedes books. I assume that's what that's all from. So eventually she's able to actually come across this old poet, Olivia, and she actually helps her out and eventually gets her into trying to think, like, get her into like sort of a competition almost to get her an award. So there's a bit of that, which is kind of a nice break from like detective stuff and like horrible kidnapping and murder and cannibalism. And then Jerome has his own little bits as well alongside Barbara. Like, he interviews one of the loved ones of the victims, and has a sad but nice moment with her, and then takes her to the hospital because she gets absolutely drunk. And then I don't want to rush it, but Holly eventually finds the connection, which is that at one point on one Christmas before, the Harrises had a Christmas party where they hired some of the younger people they knew and had them dressed up as Christmas elves and go to the houses of their colleagues to give them some food for Christmas because they can't have an actual party because of COVID. And it turns out that Bonnie was one of those Christmas elves, and no surprise, they did kidnap her. And that's the connection Holly uses to pinpoint the Harrises. Eventually, at one point, they try to... I think they try to trick Holly into taking, some bait with the same kind of ploy they've been using, which is, helpless old person trying to get to their, accessibility van. And Holly, obviously saw for that and says as much to Emily, and even breaks her wrist when she tries to, attack. Just, snaps that old wrist. But it's not enough because she tases her, and they take her away to their basement. So that's when, we got that classic movie type of moment where she's captured, but she's also talking to Roddy, and he starts explaining everything, and that's when we get his whole theory on, activating the liver and how it, heals you and all that by eating it, and going off of the idea the ideas of ancient cultures that did something similar, believe something similar. And obviously Holly thinks that's absolutely insane, and she's able to get stuff out of him, including the fact that he figures out Bonnie is dead and Eden, which we figured as much we figured as much if we've all read the in perspective chapter from them where they have fully kidnapped Bonnie and are preparing to carve her up, which is, sad, but makes sense, seeing how there's like a full ass few weeks between when that chapter takes place and when Holly's caught herself. But she's able to also goad Roddy into like getting all mad and getting close to the bars, and grabs him, like starts knocking him into the bars, and thankfully she had in her hand, as much as it probably hurt, like just clasp in there, Bonnie's earring, which she had found very early in the book as evidence, but she had the other one with her, and it's sharp enough to where she can slice Roddy's throat open, and he just bleeds out and dies right there, which shocked me for a mystery book, but this is Stephen King, so that makes sense. It's kind of the thing I want to happen. Like, these Private Eyes obviously would usually go by the book in something like a Agatha Christie novel, but not good old Stephen King. Eventually, Emily comes downstairs and, shocked to find her husband dead. And Holly tells her what happened as much, which is like, I killed him. I slit his fracking throat. She uses a replacement word for fuck, which makes sense for a woman in her early 50s who I imagine probably has like I'd say like something close to a Minnesotan accent, maybe. But even in the middle of that, she also thinks more about her mother and her uncle, and realizes they're kind of shitty, especially her mom, who also tried to steer her away from the private eye business. And, goes from, in her head, being like, frack them to fuck them, which, pretty good moment, not gonna lie. And then, Emily picks up Holly's gun, which they had, commandeered, and tries to shoot her while Holly is basically taunting her by continuously trying to tell a joke, which throughout the book she's been coming up with herself, which is a new millionaire walks into the bar, and she keeps shooting but missing, and Holly's gun doesn't have a lot of bullets, especially because I'm pretty sure she didn't load like the last chamber, which I think is usually something people do with revolvers, because they don't have safeties like other guns. And that works out pretty well, and Emily tries to go upstairs to get something else, but she keeps breaking her bones, and throughout that part, Holly is thinking to herself, break your bones, which is kind of cathartic, and I kind of love. And again, it's not something you'd expect from a mystery book, but Stephen King, so that's satisfying as hell. Oh god, I kind of forgot what happens next. That's right. I think she actually goes up to the bars to do something else, actually, and Holly breaks her neck. I think that's what happened. I almost forgot. So she does that, which is crazy. And eventually, Barbara and Jerome and Holly's other friend in the business, Pete, figure out that she's missing and try to figure out where she goes, and they eventually figure out where she is, and the police are there. They find her, and all's resolved. Other than the sad stuff, like how are you going to tell the victims' families that their loved ones got killed and eaten? Which you can't, but both fortunately and unfortunately, Holly didn't have to do that job, but her regular police friend Izzy did. And she told Penny Doll, and Penny doesn't want to speak to Holly again, which I doubt Holly does either. And there's also like a part where Jerome has to tell the mother of like the younger boy who was also kidnapped and eaten that he was killed and eaten. And there's like a part at the end of that moment where she asks him if, he was in pain when it happened, and Jerome tries to say no, and she's like, what? How do you know? And he's like, I think it was pathology test is what he says. And then she has him like swear on his mother's grave, and he does, which is crazy, but very interesting. And after that, the book does mostly end on a messed up but positive-ish note. Main character lived, so. And it fully ends with her picking up the phone, clearly ready for another case, which I guess we'll have to wait and see if that becomes another book. And that was the story of Holly. Very fucked up, but an interesting one. So that's the end of the video. Like I said at the beginning of the non-spoiler section, I'm giving this book a 7 out of 10, pretty solid. Let me know what you thought of Holly, and what do you think of Stephen King in general as an author. I'll definitely read more stuff of his, and I'll try to get the rest of my March reading list out of the way. And quick thing, in the to be read short that I released, I mentioned Batman comic for March. I moved that over to April just because, and I also moved a book that I had in April to May, so it worked out a little bit and sorted that out. So just 2 more books to cover for March, and then we can finally get through April. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out the rest of my videos. Take care.